Since 19th of September, 1944, the air was thick with smoke, dust, and gunpowder. Somewhere in the woods of eastern France, near the edge of a broken village, Private Jack Miller crouched behind the ruins of a blown-out farmhouse. The German army had been advancing fast, stronger and more brutal than anyone had expected. His unit, Charlie Company, had been stationed here to slow them down. But hours earlier, a surprise attack had scattered the men like leaves in a storm. Now, Jack was alone. His rifle was low on bullets. His hands shook, not from fear, but from exhaustion. He had not eaten properly in 2 days, and sleep had become a luxury long forgotten. Blood dried on his cheek where shrapnel had grazed him. Around him, silence grew heavy, only broken by the distant rumble of tanks and the occasional crack of a sniper's bullet in the distance. He had no orders, no backup, no radio, no map, just instinct and a burning anger inside him. Earlier that morning, before the attack, a group of German prisoners had been marched through the area. One of them, a young officer with a cold smirk, had looked Jack dead in the eye and said in broken English, "Americans are weak. One of you is nothing." The guards had laughed. The prisoners had laughed. Even some of Jack's own comrades had shrugged it off like it was just trash talk. But it stayed with him. The words played in his mind like a stuck record. One of you is nothing. Now, as the sun began to dip low, turning the battlefield a soft orange, he saw movement. Not one man, not 10. A whole wave. Dozens upon dozens of German soldiers, creeping through the trees and across the open field, heading straight toward the broken farmhouse. He counted quickly. Maybe 200. No, more. He stopped at 250, his breath stuck in his chest. There was no one else between them and the main road. If they passed through here, they'd get behind the Allied line. It would be a slaughter. Jack looked down at his gear. 3 grenades, a half-full ammo belt, a pistol, his rifle. His brain told him to run, hide, save himself. But his heart said something else. He took position in the shadow of the ruined wall and waited. He let the first group get close, too close, then opened fire. The first shots dropped 3 soldiers immediately, their cries sending confusion through the crowd. He ducked, rolled to another window, and fired again. Grenades flew in. He kicked one out through the same hole it came through. It exploded mid-air, taking out the ones who had thrown it. He kept moving, from one spot to the next. He didn't stay still. That was death. He used every trick he had learned in basic training and every ounce of grit the war had beaten into him. They tried to circle him. He shot their legs. They tried to sneak in. He used a grenade, and the explosion shook the entire wall. Bodies started to pile up. They started yelling, confused, scared. Some screamed commands in German. Others cried for cover. One shouted, "There's more of them in the house!" But there weren't. It was just Jack. His hands bled. His shoulder felt like it was being stabbed each time he moved. His mind burned with fire and rage and some kind of madness that made him stronger than he had ever been. One man against 250. He could hear them now, shouting to fall back, pulling their injured with them. He had held the line, alone, for over an hour, and he wasn't done yet. The smoke had cleared just enough for Jack to see what he'd done. Bodies lay sprawled across the field, some still moving, others frozen in place. German rifles were scattered in the mud, a few still clutched in the hands of the fallen. The moans of the wounded echoed between the trees. Jack's heart pounded so loud he could barely hear anything else. His fingers ached from gripping his rifle too tight, and blood now soaked through the sleeve of his uniform where a bullet had grazed his upper arm. He didn't feel the pain, not yet. Adrenaline still ruled him, but he knew this wasn't over. The Germans weren't just going to give up after one failed push. No, they'd regroup. They'd come back smarter, harder, and this time they'd bring more firepower. Jack moved quickly, limping now, ducking into the remains of the farmhouse. He scanned for ammo. The body of a fallen American soldier lay face down near the door. Private Collins. Jack whispered a quick apology and took the extra clips from his belt. War made you do things you never imagined. It turned friends into resources, heroes into survivors. He reloaded, checked his grenades, 2 left. Then he heard it, a low metallic whine in the distance. At first he thought it was in his head, but it got louder. The trees shook, leaves trembled. A tank. Jack's stomach dropped. They were bringing armor, and he was still alone. He knew the layout of the land better than they did. He'd been stationed here for 3 weeks, had walked the nearby hills, the narrow paths between the trees, the crumbled fences and hidden wells. He didn't have heavy weapons, but he had something the Germans didn't have yet: desperation and anger. He ran, fast as he could, past the barn, down a muddy slope toward a rusted-out shed where the engineers had once stashed old supplies. Half the roof had collapsed, but inside, Jack found what he was looking for: a crate of sticky bombs. Experimental stuff. Dangerous. Half the time they exploded before you even used them. But this wasn't the time to get picky. By the time he made it back to the tree line, the German tank had broken through the smoke, followed by more men. Maybe another 100. Jack was covered in mud, sweat pouring down his face, teeth clenched. He crawled low, eyes locked on the tank. It was moving slow, steady, like it owned the land. Soldiers spread out around it, checking every window, every wall. They still thought it was a group. They had no idea it was just one stubborn, furious American with nothing left to lose. Jack waited until the tank was close, too close, then ran out from behind a collapsed cart. He screamed something, maybe a curse, maybe a prayer, and threw the first sticky bomb right at the tank's treads. It hit with a dull thump and stuck like a leech. The Germans shouted. Too late. The explosion was deafening. Fire tore through the side of the tank, and shrapnel flew in every direction. The machine jolted, then slumped into the mud, smoke belching from its sides like a dying beast. Screams followed. Chaos. Jack didn't stop. He ran again, flanked left, circled through the bushes, and tossed his second bomb at a cluster of soldiers regrouping near a tree line. The blast lifted them off the ground. Some never got back up. Now the Germans weren't laughing. Now they were panicking. Some shouted, "Zurück! Zurück! Retreat!" A few stayed behind to return fire, but most were already falling back. The second assault had failed. One man, just one, had destroyed their tank, scattered their troops, and made them fear a ghost army that didn't exist. As Jack knelt behind a wall, gasping for air, his vision blurring from exhaustion, he heard footsteps, fast ones, coming through the trees behind him. He raised his rifle, ready to fire. Then came the voice, "Jesus Christ! Is that Miller?" It was Sergeant Davis. Behind him, a dozen Allied soldiers rushed in, weapons ready, eyes wide as they looked around at the destruction. Jack didn't answer. He just dropped his rifle, collapsed to his knees, and let the blackness take him. But even as he faded out, he knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't be laughing now. The world returned to Jack slowly, like rising from a deep, cold river. First came the sounds, distant voices, clinking metal, the soft crunch of boots over gravel. Then, the pain. His body screamed at him. His arm burned, his ribs felt broken, and his mouth was dry like he'd chewed sand. He opened his eyes to a dim tent, canvas walls flapping gently. The familiar smell of antiseptic stung his nose. A field medic looked over and blinked in shock. "You're awake?" Jack tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. "Water." The medic grabbed a canteen and held it to his lips. Cool water poured into his mouth. And for a moment, Jack closed his eyes again, letting it wash away the metallic taste of war. "You're a damn legend," the medic said, smiling like he was in the presence of a movie star. Do you even know what you did out there? Jack blinked, confused. You held off 250 Germans. Alone. Took out a tank. Bought us enough time to regroup and retake the whole sector. Jack stared at him. It sounded like a dream. A lie someone would tell to make sense of madness. Where's Davis? He asked. Alive? Thanks to you? Whole units talking about it. Command's already heard. Some colonel's coming down here just to shake your hand. Jack groaned and turned his face to the side. That wasn't what he wanted. He didn't do it for medals or praise. He did it because nobody else was there. And because he refused to die on his knees. Later that day, Davis came in, limping slightly, his leg bandaged up. He stood quietly for a moment before speaking. I thought you were dead, Miller. Jack smirked weakly. I thought you were smarter than that, Davis chuckled. You crazy bastard. There was silence for a few seconds. Then the sergeant's voice dropped. I saw the field. You did what a whole squad couldn't. Jack sat up slowly, wincing. I didn't win. They'll come back. Stronger. Davis nodded. Yeah, but next time we'll be ready. Thanks to you. News spread fast. By the next day, a photographer showed up. They tried to make Jack pose with a rifle, standing in front of the wrecked tank. He refused, said if they wanted a picture, they could take one of the graves of the men who didn't make it. But the army didn't care about modesty. They printed his name in papers. The one-man wall. The soldier who stopped an army. Letters poured in. The faces haunted him. The German boy with wide eyes before the grenade landed. The American soldier with his back blown open who never even screamed. The sound of metal twisting and breaking. The laughter. German voices laughing at him before it all began. It all came back. He walked alone most days. Refused ceremonies. Refused interviews. One evening, sitting by the edge of a hill overlooking the field he'd fought in, a young private approached him. Nervous, probably 19 at most. Sir, is it true about what you did? All of it. Jack didn't answer right away. The boy kept going. They say you killed over 100 men, alone, with nothing but a rifle and some grenades. That you didn't even blink. Jack turned slowly, met his eyes. I blinked, he said quietly. I bled. I screamed. And I did it because nobody else was left. The private looked stunned. Jack stood up, brushing dirt off his pants. Let them tell their stories. Just don't believe every one of them. He walked off without another word. Behind him, the field stretched quiet and green now, birds chirping where bullets once flew. But deep in the ground, the truth still lay buried. One man, 250 enemies, and a moment in history that nobody could ever fully understand, except the man who lived it. A week passed. The wounds on Jack's body had started to heal, but the ones in his mind festered like open cuts. He didn't talk much, didn't joke with the others, didn't join in the card games or smoke breaks. When the men in his unit laughed around the campfire, he sat on the edge, staring at the ground, listening, but never really hearing. The only thing that brought him peace was the silence before dawn. That cold, gray hour when the sky was still deciding whether to give the world light or not. That's when he walked alone, down past the field hospital, past the supply trucks, to the edge of the forest where the trees still bore the scars of war. Bullet holes, burned bark, shredded leaves, nature wounded like men. He wasn't alone for long. One morning, he found a soldier waiting for him there. A tall, thin man with wire-framed glasses and a nervous look in his eyes. He wore the uniform of military intelligence. Private Jack Miller? The man asked, holding a clipboard close to his chest. Jack nodded, not slowing his walk. I need to speak with you. Command's orders. Jack sighed but stopped. Go ahead. I was sent to debrief you personally. The higher-ups are interested in your situation. You see, statistically, what you did should have been impossible. One man holding off 250 Germans, destroying a tank with no support. The math doesn't add up. Jack stared at him. So what are you saying? I'm saying we've had reports like this before. Lone soldiers doing the impossible. Not just Americans, Russians, Brits, even some French resistance fighters. Stories like yours, where one person turns the tide of an entire battle. Jack folded his arms. You think I'm lying? No, not at all, the man said quickly. But there's talk, rumors, that maybe some soldiers are different. Different how? The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. Enhanced. Jack's face hardened. I'm not some damn experiment. The man nodded again. I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying, people in Washington want to meet you, study you, figure out how a farm boy from Arkansas just rewrote the rules of war. Jack took a long step forward, until he was nose to nose with the man. Tell them if they want to study something, they can go dig up the boys who didn't make it. See what war does to a man when he watches his friends die in pieces. He turned and walked away. That night, they moved him. No warning, just orders. Sergeant Davis came by his tent, eyes downcast, carrying a folded paper. Transfer. Jack looked up. To where? They're not saying. Some kind of special operations unit. Jack didn't answer. They think you're a weapon now, Jack. Not a man. A weapon. Jack packed his things in silence. The camp was already treating him like a ghost anyway. Some of the men worshipped him, others avoided him like bad luck. None of them treated him like a person. Before dawn, a black transport truck pulled up. No markings. Two soldiers in black uniforms stepped out. American, but different. No names on their jackets. No smiles. No words. Jack climbed in without protest. The truck drove for hours. Through ruined towns, past burning fields, down roads cracked by tank treads. Somewhere between nowhere and hell, it stopped at a high-walled compound hidden in the forest. No signs, no flags, just concrete and barbed wire. Inside, Jack saw things he wasn't meant to see. Other soldiers, some twitching, some shaking, some screaming in their sleep. Men with burns that didn't scar, eyes that glowed slightly in the dark, hands that could crush metal. One sat strapped to a chair, whispering in a language no one recognized. They had all done things, like Jack, things that made no sense. One guard said quietly, "Welcome to Echo Division." Jack didn't ask questions, not yet, but something inside him stirred, a feeling worse than fear. He thought the war had made him dangerous. Now, he was starting to wonder if it had made him something else entirely. Inside the cold walls of Echo Division, everything felt wrong. There were no windows. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. Too white, too sterile. Like the place had been designed not for comfort, but for control. Jack had been in war zones that felt more alive than this place. They didn't call it a base. They called it a facility. He was given a bunk in a long, narrow room with 7 other soldiers. None of them spoke at first. Most sat on their beds, staring at the floor or the ceiling, trapped inside their own heads. Jack could feel it. The weight of something unnatural pressing down on everyone here. The man across from him, a heavy-set Marine with a scar down his cheek, finally broke the silence. "You hear it yet?" he asked, voice low. Jack frowned. "Hear what?" "The hum. This place. It talks." Jack shook his head slowly. "I just hear the lights," the Marine chuckled darkly. "That's what it starts with." Over the next few days, Jack learned 2 things. First, the others here weren't ordinary soldiers. They were like him, survivors of impossible situations. One had reportedly survived a direct mortar blast and walked away without a scratch. Another was a sniper who claimed she could hear enemy heartbeats from 300 meters. Some were calm. Some weren't right in the head anymore. Second, Echo Division wasn't run by the military. Not entirely. There were doctors here, yes, but not medics, scientists. Men in suits. Civilians with clipped voices and dead eyes. They watched everything. Through cameras, through two-way mirrors, through tests, always tests. It started with blood work. Then came the memory drills, the pain threshold tests, flash simulation chambers where they dropped Jack into artificial war zones filled with fire and noise and smoke and screams. Every time he passed, every time they wrote more notes. He'd asked once, "What the hell are you looking for?" A doctor in a white coat had simply replied, "The edge of human potential." Jack was smart enough to realize they didn't see him as human anymore. But then, on the sixth night, everything changed. The alarms blared. Red lights strobed the halls. A voice over the speaker crackled, "Containment breach! Level 3. All personnel lockdown." Jack shot out of bed. Doors slammed shut across the facility. Men screamed in the distance. One of the soldiers from his unit, a quiet guy named Petrov, began laughing hysterically and slamming his head into the wall. "What the hell's going on?" Jack barked, grabbing his boots. The Marine with the scar shouted back, "I told you! This place ain't for studying soldiers. They're making something in here. And now it's loose." A pounding noise echoed from below. Something massive, something that didn't sound like boots. Jack didn't wait. He ran. Through the corridor, past panicked staff and locked labs, toward the lower levels. Something deep inside him said, "Don't go down there." But something stronger said, "You need to know." He found the elevator offline, so he pried open the maintenance shaft and climbed. What he found in the basement wasn't just horror. It was truth. Glass tanks, shattered. Inside one of them, black liquid still dripped from the walls. Footprints, inhuman, slick and long, tracked across the floor. A dead scientist lay nearby, throat torn open, but eyes still blinking. And on the far side of the chamber, a door had been bent open from the inside. Whatever they had created, it wasn't human. And somehow, Jack felt it before he saw it. A presence. Something moving in the shadows. Then, from the dark, a voice. Not like a man's, not like an animal's. "You're not like the others?" Jack froze. He could feel it watching him. "You've seen death, but you're not broken by it. You're becoming what?" Jack's mind screamed for answers, but his body refused to move. Then the lights flickered, and it was gone. He stood alone in that room of blood and broken glass, heart pounding like war drums. Echo Division wasn't studying monsters. They were building them, and Jack had just learned he might be the next one. Jack didn't sleep that night. He sat in the corner of his bunk, staring at the wall, muscles tense, ears tuned to every sound the facility made. The humming vents, the footsteps of guards pacing above, the faint moan of metal shifting beneath weight that shouldn't exist. Every once in a while, he thought he heard something else. Breathing. But not human. Wet. Slow. Like something too big to fit into the lungs of a man. Nobody else seemed to notice. Or maybe they did, and were too far gone to care. The next morning, the halls were back to normal. Lights bright, soldiers marching, doctors whispering behind clipboards. No one mentioned the breach. No alarms, no dead bodies. The lower levels were sealed tight. If Jack hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he'd think he was going crazy. But he knew what he'd felt. The presence, the voice, the way it had spoken to him like it knew him. Not just as a soldier, but as something deeper. That afternoon, he was summoned. Not to a doctor, not to a briefing, to her. Major Evelyn Kessler. The OD, real authority behind Echo Division. She was waiting. For him in a glass-walled office that looked down over the training. Floor like a queen watching, ants fight below. Jack stepped in. She didn't. Smile. Sit. He remained standing. She didn't seem surprised. "You were in the restricted area." she said calmly, not accusing, just stating fact. You saw it. Jack clenched his jaw. What the hell is it? A mistake, she replied. A necessary one. That thing isn't human. No. But neither are you anymore. Silence. He felt it then. That weight again. Not from her. From behind the glass. From somewhere beyond this room. Watching. She stood and stepped closer, her heels quiet against the polished floor. Her voice dropped to a whisper. There's a war coming, Jack. One bigger than the one outside. Bigger than flags and borders. We're not fighting men anymore. We're fighting extinction. Jack stared at her, eyes narrow. So you make monsters? She leaned in. No, we find them. The war made you one. We're just showing you what you already are. Then she handed him a folder. Black. No markings. Sealed tight. Inside, a mission briefing. Location, Northern Belgium. Deep forest. Former Nazi research facility. Objective. Contain and recover. Subject B7. Target description. Biological anomaly. Origin unknown. Aggression extreme. Survivors 0. He looked up. I'm not working for you. Kessler smirked. You don't have to. But if you want to understand what you're becoming, you'll need to meet something worse. Later that night, they dropped him in by chopper. No team, no backup, just Jack, a weapon crate, and a warning. If it talks to you, don't answer. The forest was dead quiet. Fog clung to the trees like fingers. The facility lay buried under decades of moss and rust, its doors broken open like a mouth screaming into the dark. Inside, the smell hit him first. Rot. Oil. Blood. Then the scratches on the walls. Not words. Symbols. Repeated over and over in some frantic, desperate hand. Then the bones. So many bones. And at the center of the main chamber, in a circle of black ash, it waited. Not tall. Not monstrous. Just a figure. Human-shaped. Head tilted like a dog hearing music. It turned. No face. Just a smooth surface of twitching black skin, constantly shifting like it was remembering every person it had ever killed. Jack raised his rifle. It didn't flinch. Instead, it spoke. In his voice. You think you're the only one who came back wrong. His finger hovered over the trigger, but he didn't fire. Because deep inside, part of him already knew. This thing wasn't just a monster. It was a mirror. Jack froze. That voice, his own voice, echoed off the cracked concrete walls like a ghost, mocking him from every direction. It wasn't possible. The thing in front of him didn't even have a mouth. Yet the words came out clear, smooth, and cold. He took a step back, rifle steady, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Stay down, he warned, voice rough. You move. I shoot. The creature tilted its head again, mimicking the way Jack did it. Same angle, same twitch of the jaw. Then it said, softly, You already did. A chill shot through his spine. Before he could react, the lights above flickered. The whole facility shuddered, dust raining from the ceiling. Somewhere in the dark, steel groaned and chains rattled. The creature didn't move, but Jack could feel something crawling inside his head. Like memories that weren't his were trying to surface. Images flashed. Blood-soaked trenches, faces screaming in fire, an explosion that never ended. Then one sharp, wrong memory. Him, standing in that same French field. But instead of Germans charging, it was himself, dozens of himself, fighting, dying. Rising again, he fired. The bullet hit center mass. The thing staggered, black fluid splattering across the wall. But instead of falling, it smiled. Or maybe its skin just stretched in a way that looked like a smile. It took another step toward him, the floor cracking under its weight. Jack reloaded, shouting, "What the hell are you?" It stopped, head lowering, voice turning raw. "What you became the moment you refused to die." Then it lunged. The impact slammed Jack into the wall, his rifle skidding away. He grabbed his knife, drove it deep into the creature's side. Black smoke hissed out, burning his skin like acid. It howled, a sound that was both man and machine, human and monster. He kicked it off and scrambled for the rifle. The thing moved fast, too fast, but Jack was faster. Training took over. He rolled, aimed, and shot again. 3 rounds straight into its chest, then 1 in the head. It fell, twitching, then went still. Silence. Just his ragged breathing and the faint hum of old machinery. He waited. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then the body began to dissolve, not burn, not rot, just melt into a pool of thick, black liquid that seeped into the cracks of the floor. And beneath it, for the briefest second, Jack saw something glowing faintly, something pulsing like a heart. He stepped closer, trembling. Inside the light, he saw faces. His unit, Davis, Collins, the ones who died, all of them staring at him like they knew. Then a whisper, faint, not from outside, but from inside his head. "You thought you were alone. You never were." Jack stumbled back, gripping his head, shaking it violently. The whispers grew louder, dozens of voices, his own voice among them. He dropped to his knees. "Get out of my head!" he screamed, but they didn't. They grew clearer, more rhythmic, like a pulse syncing with his heart. His veins burned hot, his vision blurred. When he looked at his hands, they were shaking violently. His skin rippled, for just a moment, like black smoke moved underneath it. The pain stopped as fast as it began. The whispers faded. He stood, shaking, drenched in sweat. The pool of black liquid was gone, but carved into the floor where it had been were words, burned deep into the stone. Echo Division was never a project. It was a warning. Jack staggered backward, heart hammering, trying to make sense of it. But then he heard something behind him. A voice on the radio clipped to his vest. Static. Then Kessler's voice. "Private Miller, report. We've got your location. Do not engage the target." Jack stared at the ruined chamber, the black stain, the glowing cracks on his own hands. He pressed the radio to his mouth. "It's too late." Kessler's voice turned sharp. "What do you mean, too late?" Jack looked down. The light beneath his skin pulsed once more. Stronger this time. "I think," he whispered, "you found what you were looking for." The radio cut to static. And in the silence, far away through the forest, something else began to answer. Jack stumbled out of the ruins and into the forest, the night thick with mist and the scent of rain-soaked earth. The trees leaned close, whispering in a wind that didn't feel natural. His boots crunched through mud and broken roots as he moved, trying to get as far away from that place as his legs could carry him. But something inside him had changed. He could feel it, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own, steady and deep, echoing under his skin. His vision was sharper. Every sound, every shift in the air was painfully clear. Even the forest seemed alive in a way he'd never noticed before, breathing with him, pulsing with some dark rhythm. He didn't know how long he'd been walking when he heard the choppers. Lights cut through the fog, blinding beams sweeping across the treetops. Then came the metallic whine of rotors and the cold, commanding voice through a megaphone. "Private Miller, this is Major Kessler. Stop where you are! Do not run! You're not well." He stopped, not because of her voice, but because he suddenly realized he could hear her heartbeat. From half a mile away, Jack turned slowly toward the lights. "Not well?" he muttered, more to himself than to her. "You did this!" The ground shook as boots hit the dirt. Dozens of soldiers, armored and armed, fanned out through the trees, rifles raised. Red targeting lasers painted across his chest. Kessler stepped forward from the group, her face pale in the floodlight glow. She wasn't afraid. Not exactly. But there was something else in her eyes. Something like awe. "Jack, listen to me," she said softly. "That thing down there, it's part of you now. It won't let you go." Jack's voice was calm. Too calm. "What is it?" She hesitated. "Then, a weapon. An intelligence older than this war. We found it buried under a German research site. The Nazis thought it was alien. We thought it was God." He laughed, short and bitter. "And you fed it soldiers." Her silence was the only answer he needed. The soldiers began closing in. 10 meters. 8. 6. Kessler raised her hand. "Don't shoot unless I say." Jack looked down at his hands again. The glow beneath his skin had grown stronger, swirling through his veins like liquid fire. For a second, he could feel everything. Their fear, their focus, even the way the earth trembled under their boots. "I can feel them," he whispered. "All of them." "Fight it!" Kessler shouted. "You're still human, Miller." "Fight it!" He looked up at her, eyes burning faintly in the darkness. Maybe that's the problem. Then the forest erupted. The ground split, trees bent, and the air itself seemed to scream. A wave of black energy exploded outward from Jack, hurling men and debris through the air. Guns twisted in their hands, lights shattered, and the choppers above spun wildly out of control. When the dust cleared, Jack stood alone again. Alive, but barely. Smoke rose from the ground. The air shimmered with heat and static. Kessler was still there, kneeling, clutching her side. Blood seeped between her fingers. She looked up at him, eyes wide with something that might have been pride or horror. "You were the proof," she whispered. "Humanity can evolve." Jack knelt beside her. "No," he said quietly. "You just taught it how to end itself." She tried to speak again, but her breath gave out. Her head slumped to the side. Jack stood. Around him, the forest was burning. Black fire crawled up the trees like ink spilling across a page. He looked down at his hands one last time. The light inside was pulsing faster now, brighter, stronger. He knew what it meant. The thing wasn't finished with him. He took a deep breath, looked toward the horizon where dawn was breaking in faint streaks of gray. Then he started walking, back into the trees, back into the smoke, back toward the place where it all began. Somewhere far behind him, radios crackled with panic and disbelief. One soldier's trembling voice came through, the only words anyone could understand. "He's still alive, and he's not alone anymore." And in the distance, through the rising fire, dozens of faint silhouettes began to move, figures that looked almost human, following the same path he had taken. Jack didn't turn around. He didn't need to. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.